Science has required, requires, and will require faith. Furthermore, science requires faith because assumptions are made all the time, and they're usually assumptions that scientists can't prove. Science can't tell you the difference between good and evil. Science can't tell us that rape is wrong. Sure, we accept that as a value judgment, but science can only tell us what's observable and testable. And even then, a degree of faith and assumption making is required.
Okay, this has got to stop. Okay, so we've all heard this statement before.
Well, first of all, I think it's quite evident from what you've seen tonight. It takes faith to believe in God. It takes faith to believe in evolution. I think it takes a lot more faith to believe in evolution than it does to believe in God, but they both require faith.
This is a clear example of an equivocation fallacy, a subset of the false equivalence fallacy. For those who aren't sure what that is, the fallacy of equivocation occurs when a key term or phrase in an argument is used in an ambiguous way, with one meaning in one portion of the argument and then another meaning in another portion of the argument. So how do all of these upstanding, intellectually honest theists do that? Let's explore the process.
The argument often begins with the claim you can't know something with absolute certainty, either due to the nature of reality or the fact you have not directly observed a phenomenon. This is a common premise which has been presented over the centuries by numerous academics, philosophers, and general thinkers alike. Most intellectually honest people accept this premise without hesitation. However, doing so forces a person to concede an acceptable level of faith in regard to their perception of reality. Let's explore this concept. Given the only thing anyone can be absolutely certain of is that they exist, and you can't be absolutely certain you aren't in the Matrix right now, and it's unrealistic to watch every single scientific experiment conducted before accepting its conclusions, most intellectually honest people will admit they can't be absolutely certain of anything, but have formed reasonable beliefs based on a system that is self-correcting and constantly following the evidence. As soon as they do this, our residential theist calls this faith and proceeds to claim that this justifies his or her faith in the supernatural, because by definition, both require faith. So let's examine the word faith in a bit more depth.
There are two definitions of faith. The first being confidence in a person or thing, and the second being holding a belief that is not based on proof. Now we can begin to see how this fits into the equivocation fallacy. One definition caters to the inability to ascertain absolute certainty of concepts or facts presented in everyday life. This is an unavoidable scenario as previously mentioned. So how do we manage to make sense of the world if we can't be certain that it's real? Every day, people make claims about relatively mundane things, and we accept these claims without hesitation, and we do so on faith. This is because when someone tells you they had a ham sandwich for lunch, the implications for the truth of this statement aren't very important, and it's a realistic scenario. However, if someone claims to have had a unicorn sandwich for lunch, you would have some questions before accepting the validity of that statement. This is an important concept because accepting the second scenario on faith would have significant outcomes to your concept of reality. Accepting that your friend had a unicorn for lunch now requires you to accept the existence of a mythical creature with no previous evidence for its existence. Let's see how this relates to science.
Accepting a scientific claim requires trust in both the scientist conducting the research and the scientific process. So is this a reasonable thing to place faith into? The scientific process for evaluating evidence is an agglomeration of individuals working together and independently to conduct research as well as assess and review the research of others in order to produce consistent evidence which can be applied to reality with equally consistent results. Any claims made within the scientific community undergo rigorous scrutiny by a multinational community of individually motivated scientists. Trust in the scientific process falls under the first definition of faith, whereas belief in the supernatural falls under the second definition. Despite this, theists neglect that there are different definitions of faith and use them synonymously.
Theist claims involving supernatural events is a claim similar to the unicorn sandwich in our previous example, and is lacking the necessary evidence which would adjust the current model of reality as to accept this claim and make it viable to believe. Hence, believing this falls under the second definition of faith, as it requires suspension of certain aspects of reality without adequate evidence. Whereas scientific concepts always fit within the model of reality or provide new evidence of mechanisms that can adjust the current model of reality. Accepting these concepts requires a degree of trust in the scientists and scientific process, but is based on evidence that is verified by a large number of independent qualified sources and is available for public access. Hence, it falls under the first definition of faith. Therefore, using the word faith to describe science and theology in the same context is an equivocation fallacy. Theists calling beliefs in scientific discoveries faith is just projecting their inadequacies onto others to try and make their position feel slightly more defensible, which frankly it isn't. Understanding this difference is essential when discussing science in public discourse, as the equivocation of the word faith is disingenuous and unjustifiably damages the image of science within the public eye. Thanks for watching. Leave us a comment, we'd love to know what you think. Subscribe to our channel, we release new videos every week. Consider liking this video and maybe giving it a share to help us raise the bar of public discourse.